I've actually taken on many different roles over the last 2 decades. Started out as an engineer. I've also been a public servant in Singapore. I've been an executive assistant where I was supporting one of the I would say prolific businessmen here in Singapore. So I learned quite a fair bit under him. And I'm currently an executive director for a non-profit organization called Urban Land Institute. I would say across these roles, I have been exposed to a diverse set of industries, whether it's tourism, intellectual property management, R&D, logistics and supply chain, and transportation, which includes aviation. I think a lot of people are curious about why I have such a wide spectrum of roles across an even more diverse variety of industries. But I think it's because ultimately I don't fixate on a typical career journey. I thrive on learning, and that learning not just means in terms of academic or by technical learning. I feel I learn a lot more from experience, and that includes meeting new people. I feel like everyone has a very unique perspective, right or wrong. But in talking to them and meeting them, I find myself either reinforcing or enriching my point of view. And I enjoy that. There is currently friction that is present, and I think it boils down to different mindsets, so different types of mindsets. There are some who adopts the mindset of being willing and prepared to consider alternatives, and there are some who are more a supporter of the ideal that we should work based off a proven track record. So I think if I was to cast it, let's say, for example, on real estate, some might argue that land use urbanization is very important. The role of CBD is here to stay. The role of office is here to stay. Nothing's going to change. Everything's going to go back to some semblance of normalcy, or what we're more familiar with in time to come. We just have to wait it out. And there are some who say, no. If you think about it, it's very important for us to adopt a very different type of mindset in terms of work from anywhere. And that means that everything is now up in the air for discussion. Everything's ambiguous. Everything's very fluid. Time will tell, I suppose, in terms of which one would gravitate or which one people would gravitate towards and which ones would stick. I, for one, am accustomed to the idea of being flexible. And I feel like I fall more into the former category, where I'm willing to consider and be prepared to consider alternatives. But again, that's why my career journey is the way it is. The 3 skills that you need that will take you no matter where you are, whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee, are the following. Public speaking. You need to be comfortable with being in front of a few people, at the very least, to present something important. So this is something that I recognized since I was in university, and I think it was fortuitous that I practiced that by putting myself in front of people as often as I could to present. I'm not a natural speaker. I think it's just something that I started to become less uncomfortable with over the years. So I would say that's very important. And as I progressed in my career, this became more prevalent in the work that I do. 2, and this is also important and connected to the first skill, is to be able to have some sense of and some skills towards graphics design. Now that covers something as basic as being proficient with PowerPoint, creating slides, or using any form of software where you have to provide a visual translation of your thoughts. That is important. So this both basically means communication. Either you're speaking it or you're showing it, or both. This is very hard to outsource this to an assistant or to a vendor and expect them to get it right, because you are you, and what you want to tell other people is your story and your interpretation of things. So these two, very important. The third one is personal financial management. Now, I'll explain this because I think this is something that is often overlooked. If you are in a position where you're able to understand and manage your own personal finances, not the company's, but your personal finances, you will be at some good sense of liberty to make the right decisions for your career, for your family, just for your personal ambition. I always find it very unfortunate when I come across somebody who is in a way stuck in a rut, or feels he or she is stuck in a rut because of finances. When there's opportunities that he or she could have taken up if it wasn't for personal financial issues. As I grow through the past 20 years, I realize as I meet more and more people that I'm always confronted internally, I would say, in terms of my ideals, my perspectives, my values, my interpretation of ethics. And I feel that one of the key learnings that I was able to eventually get around to was to be willing to humble myself, not in front of people, but humble myself in front of myself. Because essentially, when someone is stubborn, or when someone is indignant or offended, I think it also speaks about the person herself, in my case, So I actually would take the time to think, well, why am I so upset about this? And I would actually challenge myself to say that I am perhaps wrong, or what I thought, or my values might be wrong. So I do spend quite a bit of time reflecting. Some would say that I'm quite critical of myself. I don't think it's necessarily about me self-bashing. if anything, I just think that it is a very important element of growth. So that's one. But following and allied to that is the willingness to take action for shortcomings. There's no point thinking, oh yeah, maybe I could improve in this area, or maybe I should have done this, but to actually want to do something about it. And if your ego doesn't allow for it, at least do it quietly, slowly improve it. So I find that there are definitely times where I've met people from my past, and I do feel regretful about maybe some of the things that have happened or were said. But I take comfort in knowing that I have actually grown since then, versus if I met that person and still feel very indignant or unhappy with that person. So those are two key things which I feel is, at least for me, was a very important learning. And I still do that. And the third is something that I've realized more lately, I would say, is that it's very important to love myself. So it contrasts the first point where I say, it's about self-bashing to some extent. But I do need to counter that with the ability to be maybe more complimentary of myself, and to stop and actually think, I'm not doing too bad a job. Because if I don't, I'll just fall into a vicious cycle of depression. So I think it's very important that as we grow, as we go through life, come what may, you don't necessarily always have a cheerleader by your side. It's good to have, it's wonderful if you have it, either in the form of family or spouse or best friend, but the one who's with you all the time is you. So very important that your cheerleader is yourself.